Now this one's going to be a bit moany because I've just had a utterly frustrating experience with Currys customer service in their Northampton Riverside store, although I'm sure the exact location of the store wouldn't make any difference. A year or so ago I bought a printer and I paid the extra for a 3-year instant replacement guarantee. So if it breaks, anything goes wrong with it, they'll just replace it. So I went over to the store, and obviously because it was a year or so ago, they don't make that exact model of printer anymore. So the next best one was about 12 quid more than what I paid for the original one. Therein lied the issue. Because it was an instant replacement guarantee, and it actually specifies on their website, you know, how does it work? It's all like, we'll replace it there and then on the spot, no extra charge. Frequently asked questions: will there be any additional charges? And it literally says, no, we would not do that to you, we will replace it straight away. They wanted to charge me the difference for the printer. I know it's only 12 quid, I wouldn't have cared if it was 2 quid. The fact of the matter is I paid extra for an instant replacement guarantee. And the problem with issues like this is there's a little thing called contract law, and they just said that that's not store policy. To which I questioned, you know, you saying that your store policy actually overrules the law and what is legally required of you as a retailer. And I was like, it's not store policy. And I'll explain to anyone that cares to listen now what I was explaining to them, trying to explain to them. If you buy an item X, you buy it, for the sake of this conversation, let's pretend it's a crash helmet. You buy the crash helmet and it costs you £200. Within 6 months, you know, a big crack appears in it, or the visor keeps breaking and the hinges keep breaking, so you take it back and they're like, well, we don't actually make that model anymore. The closest one we've got to it is this, and it's £250. You pay £200, this replacement one is £250. Now, what contract law does to protect buyers, customers, is that additional charge is taken on by the retailer or the manufacturer. And by law, they have to give you a replacement. They can't just say, well, you know, this one costs more, so you've got to pay the extra. That is, honestly, that is not how it works. Most people that work in shops, or most shops, don't realise this. How they don't realise it, I really don't know, because they run businesses. They're meant to be aware of how this stuff works. But they're not. And that also, by the way, includes sale items. You were to buy something in the sale, say you buy something that's, let's stick with £200, you buy something that's £200, you get it home, you use it for a little while, thing starts to fall apart or break, you take it back and they're like, oh, we no longer have that item because it's on sale. The next thing closest to it is this next model up, but that's not in the sale, that's £400. By law, they have to give you that next replacement at no additional cost to you. That in itself, trying to explain to someone that works in a shop, and it's not their fault, they don't get the training, but that in itself is a stressful conversation to have, because you know they're going to think you're just making shit up. But what didn't help was that the lady serving me was so fucking rude. She was sort of like, no, that's not the policy. So I showed her on their website where it says that that's exactly what they'll do, and she just looked confused. And she's like, well, no, it must mean something else. So I showed her the frequently asked question where it specifies it in more detail. Well, all I can do is suggest you contact customer services, which I'd done in advance because I had anticipated this. And they told me to take it into store and they'd just swap it. So I said to her, can I speak to a manager? And she was like, well, yeah, if you really want to. I was like, well, yeah, I do. I said, because, you know, she said, he'll just say the same thing I do. I said, well, I'd like to speak to him anyway, just in case. And she literally went, well, no, there's no just in case, because that's not our policy. So I was like, get the manager. I didn't say I was restraining myself at that point. It's worth pointing out at this point that I'd been in the queue for half an hour and this conversation had gone on for 10 minutes. So I'd been in the queue for 40 minutes. She then went and spoke to someone, didn't say anything to me at all, and left me standing there for another 10 minutes while she served someone else. Then she just called me over and gave me the new printer and said, oh, my manager as a one-off has authorised this. And I said to her, well, you know, although I appreciate that, you're saying it as a one-off like you're doing me a favour, but that's how you should be doing it in every single situation like this, because that's the law. And she just kind of sneered at me as I left the shop, and it just really pissed me off, man.